In the gripping finale, we witness Jun Won's unexpected encounter with Nuri and Dohee on his way home. Nuri, fraught with urgency due to relentless calls from her parents, entrusts Dohee's care to Jun Won. Amidst the chaos, Jun Won receives a crucial call from Dohee's friend Eun, only to be thwarted by his phone's sudden battery drain before he could convey their location. As if on cue, the heavens open up, showering Dohee, still unconscious, with rain. In the eerie calm of a hotel room, Dohee slowly regains consciousness, her gaze meeting Jun Won's determined stare. However, still inebriated, she begins to mutter to herself, grappling with the surreal sensation of Jun Won invading her dreams. She yearns to purge him from her thoughts, yet he persists, tormenting her sanity. Jun Won, initially taken aback by Dohee's ramblings, can't help but sport a sly grin. Drawing closer to Dohee, Jun Won confronts her, questioning her earlier insistence to bury their encounter. Dohee's response, delivered in a haze of frustration and confusion, reflects her fear of losing herself amidst the tumultuous emotions stirred by their brief connection. Determined to sever ties, she resolves to put an end to their entanglement. Jun Won, reeling from Dohee's declaration, can't contain his disbelief. The next morning, Dohee confronts Jun Won, perplexed by their shared bed. Jun Won coolly reminds her of Nuri's request for him to stay by her side, implying it was a matter of basic courtesy rather than any romantic intention. He suggests Dohee should be grateful he didn't leave her stranded in the rain. Promptly, Dohee bows an apology, relieved that their closeness didn't lead to anything more, chalking it up to another potential mistake averted. Then, in a surprising turn, Jun Won leans in, asking if he can kiss her. Bewildered, Dohee questions his meaning. With a playful smirk, Jun Won suggests that if nothing happened, perhaps it's time to change that. As Dohee closes her eyes in disbelief, Jun Won tenderly kisses her forehead, teasing her about her expectations. Annoyed by Jun Won's antics, Dohee reacts impulsively, delivering a swift kick to his leg before storming towards the door. Jun Won, unfazed, watches her exit with a smirk, a glint of amusement in his eyes. As the door slams shut behind her, Jun Won's smile widens, relishing in the playful exchange. As Dohee strides into her apartment, she catches sight of Eun loitering outside her door, and her voice bristles with a mixture of surprise and suspicion. "What in the world are you doing here?" Eun, in turn, launches into a rapid-fire interrogation, his tone tinged with concern and frustration. "Why are you coming home now? Where were you last night? Why didn't you answer your calls? And where on earth have you been?" Moving closer, Dohee explains that her phone had died, but Eun's agitation only seems to intensify. Anxiously, he persists, "What happened to you last night? And where did you sleep?" Just as Dohee is about to respond, a wave of embarrassment crashes over her as memories of Jun Won flood her mind. With a palpable sense of discomfort, she brushes off Eun's inquiries, urging him to forget it, admitting it was a night she'd rather not revisit. But Eun refuses to let it go, his concern evident in his insistent tone as he probes, "Did something happen?" Dismissing it as trivial, Dohee insists it was nothing more than a minor mishap. Yet Eun can't help but suggest that perhaps her penchant for drinking is to blame, questioning why she indulges every single day. Defending herself, Dohee offers a simple apology before extending an olive branch in the form of cooking instant ramen to ease her hangover. With a flush creeping up his cheeks at the term "dear" slipping from Dohee's lips, Eun finds himself momentarily speechless. Caught off guard by her teasing tone, Dohee can't resist poking fun at his reaction, playfully asking if she managed to make his heart flutter. The next day, as Dohee's colleagues chatted, whispers about Jun Won's past surfaced. It seemed Jun Won had been engaged about 2 years ago to a stunning woman, with invitations sent out for their impending wedding. However, the wedding was abruptly called off just a week before. Dohee was stunned by the revelation, struggling to comprehend what she was hearing. Suddenly, she remembered her colleague Yang had an important presentation scheduled for that day. Concerned, Dohee inquired about Yang's preparations. Yang confessed that Dohee's mention of it was making her more nervous for no reason. Offering words of encouragement, Dohee reassured Yang that she would do brilliantly and advised her to relax and take it easy. As they made their way to the office, a man carelessly collided with Yang, causing both of them to stumble and fall. After a quick apology, the man hastily gathered his belongings and departed. Yang retrieved her belongings, including her pen drive, and continued on to her meeting. Little did they know, Jun Won was also present at the meeting. As Dohee observed him, she couldn't help but feel that the more she learned about Jun Won, the less she knew about him. Yang plugged her pendrive into the laptop and began her presentation. However, to everyone's shock, instead of her slides, an inappropriate video suddenly appeared on the screen. Murmurs rippled through the room as confusion and embarrassment swept over the attendees. The director's frustration was palpable as he stared at the unexpected turn of events. After the chaotic meeting, Ong sheepishly explained to the director that she had accidentally swapped her flash drive with a stranger on the street. However, the director wasn't having any of it. He dismissed her excuses and scolded her for what he deemed as irresponsibility, even making a disparaging remark about women's ability to focus. Later that evening, when Dohee invited Yang to join the company dinner, Ong declined, still feeling embarrassed about the day's events. Just then, Jun Won appeared beside Dohee, noticing her tired expression. He pulled out a cigarette and offered one to Dohee, but she declined, stating that she had quit smoking 3 years ago. Jun Won expressed his disbelief, impressed by her determination. Dohee grinned, taking his comment as a compliment. Jun Won was surprised by Dohee's positive reaction, as most people didn't like being called intense. Dohee, however, explained that she embraced it because, in her experience, being clever often got labeled as sneaky, and hard work was dismissed as intensity. Suddenly, Jun Won extinguished his cigarette, perhaps contemplating Dohee's words. Dohee couldn't help but ask why Jun Won was extinguishing the cigarette he had just lit. Jun Won's response caught her off guard as he mentioned that he did it for her, given her intense nature. Leaning closer, he posed another question, asking if she would allow him to do something else instead. Dohee chuckled, accusing him of making things difficult with his playful banter. But Jun Won's tone shifted, his words carrying a sincerity that gave Dohee pause. Before she could respond, however, Dohee found herself unable to speak, as if her voice had been stolen. It was a sensation she recognized all too well, it always happened just before a time loop began. With a sinking feeling, she realized that she could predict the onset of a time loop 5 minutes beforehand. Jun Won's words confirmed her suspicions, leaving her stunned as if he had read her mind. And then, just like that, the time loop took hold, whisking Dohee back to the beginning of the day. Sitting on her bed, Dohee couldn't shake the thought that perhaps Jun Won didn't experience the same symptoms during the time loop as she did. But then, she remembered the pained expression he had worn while they spoke, leaving her puzzled. Pushing aside her thoughts, she resolved to focus on rectifying whatever had gone wrong that day. The opportunity arose during lunch with her colleagues. As they exited the cafeteria, Dohee spotted the unfamiliar man and instinctively pulled Yang out of harm's way. Yang, taken aback by Dohee's swift action, expressed her gratitude, leaving Dohee feeling a mix of relief and satisfaction. And just like that, the timeline shifted, and Yang's presentation went off without a hitch, earning her praise from the director. Witnessing Yang's success, Dohee felt a surge of happiness and relief wash over her. Later that evening, Dohee waited for Jun Won in their usual alley. When he finally appeared, he couldn't help but question her about her knowledge of escaping the time loop. Dohee assured him that she did indeed know the key to breaking free, by acting exactly as she did on the first day. But Jun Won pointed out her deviation from her usual actions that day, which had affected Yang's outcome. With a sinking feeling, Dohee realized that today would likely repeat itself once more. Dohee's tone turned firm as she explained to Jun Won that to her, the time loop felt like having access to an answer sheet, it offered her the chance to go back and rectify past mistakes. Why should she pass up such a God-sent opportunity? Jun Won pondered aloud if it mattered to her that the day would repeat itself and that tomorrow might not come. Dohee remained resolute, stating that she understood the repetition wouldn't last forever. Even if it meant enduring the cycle 20 or 30 times, if it meant fixing her life, wasn't it worth it? Jun Won's irritation became apparent as he retorted that he couldn't believe Dohee viewed the time loop as a blessing from God. To him, it was nothing but a curse, a tiresome, repulsive curse. Dohee was taken aback by Jun Won's intense animosity towards the time loop. His voice continued, filled with conviction, as he explained their inexplicable synchronization within the loop. He emphasized that if Dohee altered her actions, he would be dragged into the loop alongside her. Thus, he earnestly requested that she adhere strictly to her original actions, promising to do the same. Finally finding her voice, Dohee confronted Jun Won with a mix of incredulity and frustration. She accused him of living a life solely focused on self-preservation, disregarding his role as the team's chief manager. Jun Won remained obstinate, shifting the blame onto Miss Yang for her error with the video. He dismissed her abilities, asserting that such mishaps were inevitable given her purported lack of talent. He questioned whether even rectifying her mistake would change the fact that she was fundamentally incapable. Dohee refused to stand idly by, asserting her principles and integrity. She declared that she was not the type to turn a blind eye to injustice, having lived by her convictions her entire life. As a final gambit, Jun Won invoked the authority of their boss, challenging Dohee with the notion of this being a direct order. The time loop struck again, and once more, Dohee found herself altering her actions to save Yang from her mistake. This recurring phenomenon had become inexplicably tied to her involvement with Jun Won. Despite her efforts, Do-hee couldn't comprehend how to break free from this cycle. September 28 repeated itself 4 times, each instance bringing Do-hee and Jun Won's relationship further to a breaking point. By September 29, their rapport had soured completely. During dinner with her friends, Nuri remarked on Do-hee's sour mood, speculating if it was due to Co Jun Won. Reflecting on Jun Won's appealing appearance juxtaposed with his unpleasant personality, Nuri voiced sympathy, imagining how challenging it must be to work under such a boss. Caught off guard, Do-hee struggled to respond, feeling overwhelmed by the weight of her emotions and the complexities of her situation. With a frustrated outburst, she brushed off the conversation, unable to articulate her feelings and simply declaring she didn't know. During a new product meeting, the director proposed that Do-hee should lead the business pitch, suggesting it would be a honey-trapping strategy. After all, who could resist her pretty face? But this notion was swiftly overturned and a female colleague argued that having Jun Won lead the presentation would lend more credibility, given the perception that a man in charge would be taken more seriously. The director promptly changed his stance, appointing Jun Won to lead the meeting instead. Frustration brewed within Do-hee as she grappled with the unfairness of the situation. If she led the pitch, it was dismissed as a honey trap, but if Jun Won took the helm, it was deemed credible, even though the project had been her brainchild since the beginning of the year. In the afternoon, as the manager inquired about Miss Nam's absence, Yang explained that she believed Miss Nam was going through a tough time. When questioned about how long Miss Nam had been away, Mr. Ha interjected, revealing that she hadn't been at her desk since lunch. He cited his criticisms of her work as the catalyst for her emotional outburst and subsequent departure. Observing from her desk, Do-hee felt a surge of frustration and disappointment. It seemed the manager was more interested in following company policy and placing blame rather than understanding the underlying issues Miss Nam was facing. In the quiet solitude of her shower, Do-hee's mind drifted back to a conversation with Jun Won, where he had confessed his emotional detachment from most situations. Reflecting on his words, she realized he had been completely accurate about himself. Yet, the idea of someone being so unfeeling left her feeling irked. How could a person function like a machine? Suddenly, Do-hee froze in place, her thoughts interrupted as if time itself had come to a standstill. Glancing at her phone, she discovered it was the morning of October 14 once again. The realization hit her like a wave, she was trapped in another time loop. Back in the office, Do-hee questioned Hyun Nam about her destination, only to learn she was headed to the printing room to fulfill a task for Mr. Ha before lunch. Memories of Mr. Ha's derogatory remarks about Nam flooded Do-hee's mind, igniting a fire within her. Upon entering the printing room, Do-hee was met with Mr. Ha's harsh criticism and belittling of Nam. Unable to contain her anger, she erupted, demanding to know what Mr. Ha thought he was doing. As he attempted to explain himself, Do-hee cut him off, her voice echoing with authority as she confronted him again. Mr. Ha, visibly irritated, attempted to leave the room, muttering his frustration. But Do-hee intervened, commanding him to collect his documents and take them with him. After the confrontation with Mr. Ha, Do-hee took Hyun Nam aside to offer some advice. Encouraging Nam to toughen up, Do-hee emphasized the importance of resilience in the workplace. Nam resolved to never cry in front of others again and vowed to make no more mistakes. However, Do-hee gently admonished this notion, reminding Nam that making mistakes was a natural part of learning and growth. She shared her own experiences as an intern and assured Nam that mistakes were opportunities for improvement, not reasons for shame. Do-hee reassured Nam that if she did make any mistakes, she could always confide in her. Nam expressed her gratitude, declaring Do-hee as her role model and expressing her desire to emulate her. But Do-hee couldn't help but feel a pang of self-deprecation, questioning the worth of being admired when she viewed herself so negatively. Suddenly, Jun Won approached Do-hee, requesting a brief conversation before the meeting. Outside the company building, Jun Won confronted Do-hee, questioning her motives for intervening with Mr. Ha. Was she acting out of selflessness or mere nosiness? Do-hee paused, gathering her thoughts before responding. Taking a deep breath, she explained that her actions stemmed from her own past struggles and the pain she endured to reach her current position in the company. She knew all too well the sting of such wounds and simply couldn't bear to see others suffer the same fate. Do-hee admitted that she couldn't ignore the inevitable consequences of injustice, and her actions were driven not by selflessness, but by a selfish desire to spare others from enduring the same pain she had. With her explanation hanging in the air, Do-hee turned and walked away from Jun Won, leaving him to ponder her words in the chilly breeze. As the meeting unfolded in its familiar pattern, frustration gnawed at Do-hee's insides. But just as despair threatened to consume her, Jun Won's hand reached out, offering a lifeline of support. In a moment of unexpected solidarity, Jun Won spoke up, advocating for Do-hee to lead the presentation. He highlighted her extensive involvement in the project and her unparalleled understanding of its intricacies. Jun Won praised Dohee's composed yet authoritative demeanor, noting how it lent credibility to her words. As Jun Won's words reverberated through the room, a sense of validation washed over Dohee. Finally, her efforts and expertise were being recognized and acknowledged. With Jun Won's endorsement, the director swiftly concurred, cementing Dohee's role as the leader of the presentation. In the serene atmosphere of the company garden, Jun Won took a moment for a smoking break, finding solace amidst the lush greenery. But his solitude was interrupted by the unexpected presence of Dohee, who approached him hesitantly, expressing her gratitude for his actions during the meeting. She acknowledged the difficulty he must have faced in going against his own principles. However, Jun Won's response caught Dohee off guard. Rather than accepting her thanks with mere words, he playfully demanded a gesture, a kiss on his cheek. Flustered, Dohee questioned his audacity, reminding him they were at work. Jun Won swiftly clarified that he had noticed an eyelash stuck on her cheek and had merely intended to remove it. As Dohee embarrassingly began to remove the eyelash from her cheek, she was caught off guard by Jun Won's unexpected action, a gentle kiss planted on her cheek. His gesture left her momentarily stunned, her cheeks flushing with warmth. Jun Won's comment about enjoying giving more than receiving lingered in the air, echoing in the garden as he made his way towards his office. However, Dohee, her mind still reeling from the unexpected intimacy, halted his departure with a question tinged with concern. She reminded him of the unpredictable nature of the time loop, questioning whether he was truly prepared to endure its repetition. But Jun Won's response was laced with confidence and a hint of playfulness, his grin offering reassurance in the face of uncertainty. His words struck a chord with Dohee, instilling a sense of companionship amidst the temporal chaos. And strangely enough, on that day, she found herself breaking free from the time loop more quickly than expected. In the comfort of Jun Won's home, his mother offered him a compliment, remarking on his increasing handsomeness with each passing day. Yet, amidst this familial warmth, Jun Won's father broached a topic that weighed heavily on his mind, the question of marriage. Knowing his father's health was fragile and time was fleeting, Jun Won remained silent, his thoughts veiled behind a facade of chewing his food. His father's frustration grew palpable as he pressed Jun Won about his plans for marriage, a matter of urgency in his eyes. He mentioned Yuna, a figure from Jun Won's past, who had recently returned to Korea. His father suggested that Yuna's lingering feelings for Jun Won and her previous decision to call off their engagement were merely youthful indiscretions. With a sense of urgency, he advised Jun Won to reconsider his relationship with her, insinuating that it was not too late to revisit their connection.